I'm
We
sorry,
open
this
on
is
a
just too
glittering
funny. I
soul
can't
charity
marry you.
gala. Crystal chandeliers
What is
cast
she
fractured light
doing?
across a sea
This
of
is
designer gowns and
awful.
tailored tuxedos. Kim Liang stands at the center of the ballroom, a velvet box open in his hand, revealing a diamond engagement ring that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. His intended bride, the daughter of a powerful political family, looks him dead in the eye and laughs. "You think money makes you a man?" she says loud enough for the room to hear. "You're nothing but your father's puppet. I'd rather marry a beggar with a spine." She turns and walks into the arms of a rival syndicate boss, their kiss deliberate, vicious, designed to destroy. The setup, the crowd freezes. Whispers ripple through the ballroom like poison. Kim Liang's jaw tightens, but he doesn't flinch. He doesn't run. Instead, his eyes scan the room with the cold calculation of a predator who's just been wounded in public and knows the pack is watching for weakness. Then his gaze locks onto her, a black woman in a simple waitress uniform, moving through the crowd with a silver tray balanced perfectly in one hand. She's the only person in the room not staring at him. She's the only person who doesn't look like she pities him or enjoys his humiliation. Liang crosses the ballroom floor in 8 measured steps. The crowd parts. He stops in front of Sindel, who finally looks up, her dark eyes meeting his without a flicker of fear or fascination. He doesn't kneel yet. He doesn't beg. He simply says, in a voice that cuts through the shocked silence, "What's your price?" Sindel raises one eyebrow, glancing at the velvet box still open in his hand, then back at his face. "For what?" "Your name. Your time. Your hand in marriage, tonight." His voice drops lower, edged with something between desperation and danger. "I need a wife by sunrise. Name. Your price." The room collectively holds its breath. Sindel sets down her tray with the calm precision of someone disarming a bomb. She doesn't smile. She doesn't gasp. She leans in just close enough that only he can hear her next words. "I don't work for money, Mr. Kim. But if you're serious..." She pulls a pen from her apron pocket and writes something on a cocktail napkin. "These are my terms." Liang reads the napkin. His eyes widen, just for a heartbeat, before his expression hardens into something unreadable. Then, in front of 300 witnesses, the heir to the most feared Korean syndicate in the world drops to one knee. Not in submission. In negotiation. "Deal," he says. Sindel looks down at him, her afro haloed by the golden light pouring through the ballroom's grand entrance behind her. For the first time tonight, she allows herself the smallest, most dangerous smile. "Then you'd better get up, Mr. Kim," she says coolly, extending her hand not to help him rise, but to shake on the contract. "Because you just hired a weapon, not a wife." Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The marriage contract arrived at dawn, delivered by a man in a black suit who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. Sindel sat at the small table in her studio apartment, still wearing the waitress uniform from the night before, and read every word. Twice. Kim Liang had kept his end of the bargain. The contract was airtight, professionally drafted, and included a monetary offer that would have made most people weep with gratitude. But Sindel wasn't most people. She picked up her phone and dialed the number he'd written on the back of the cocktail napkin. He answered on the first ring. "Second thoughts?" "Amendments," she said. "Meet me at the address I'm about to text you. 1 hour. Come alone." The location she chose was a 24-hour diner in a part of town where men in $1,000 suits didn't usually venture. Liang arrived exactly 60 minutes later, flanked by 2 bodyguards who looked like they could bench press a sedan. Sindel didn't stand when he approached her booth. "I said alone." Liang gestured to his men. They hesitated, then retreated to the parking lot. He slid into the seat across from her, his expression unreadable. "You're either very brave or very stupid," he said. "I'm practical." Sindel pushed a folder across the table. "Your contract is missing something critical." Liang opened it. Inside was a single page, typed in precise legal language. His eyes scanned the text, then stopped. He read it again, slower this time. "Diplomatic immunity," he said flatly. "You want to be untouchable by American law." "I want to be untouchable by anyone's law," Sindel corrected. "If I'm going to be your wife, even on paper, I need guarantees." "Your world is dangerous, Mr. Kim. I won't survive it as a victim." "And you think diplomatic status will protect you?" "I think it's a start." She leaned back, arms crossed. "You're a powerful man with powerful enemies. The moment we're married, I become a target. So either you give me the tools to defend myself, or you find another bride." Liang was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It wasn't warm, but it was genuine. "You negotiated this yourself?" "Every word." "No lawyer?" "I don't trust lawyers." He closed the folder and pulled a pen from his jacket. "If I agree to this, you understand what it means? You'll be tied to me in ways that go beyond a piece of paper. There's no walking away." "I'm aware." Liang signed the amendment without another word. Then he pushed the folder back across the table. "We're married in 6 hours," he said. "I've arranged for a dress, a photographer, and a judge who asks no questions. My family won't attend, this isn't that kind of wedding." "Good," Sindel said. "I don't do well with crowds." "Neither do I." He stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "One more thing. The woman who rejected me last night? Her name is Ji-Yeon Park. She'll come for you eventually. They always do. Let her come." Liang studied her for a beat longer than necessary, as if trying to decode a language he didn't quite speak. Then he walked out, leaving behind a black credit card on the table. "For the dress," he said over his shoulder. "Don't choose white. It sends the wrong message." Sindel picked up the card, turning it over in her fingers. She just signed her life away to a man she'd known for less than 12 hours. A man who controlled half the organized crime in the eastern United States. A man who'd been humiliated in front of his entire world and decided the solution was to marry a stranger. She pocketed the card and finished her coffee. The wedding happened in a private office overlooking the Hudson River. The judge was an older man with tired eyes who read from a script and didn't ask why the bride wore a blood-red dress or why the groom's knuckles were bruised. The ceremony lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, Liang slipped a platinum band onto Sindel's finger, simple, unadorned, and cold as ice. "Mrs. Kim," he said, testing the words. "Ms. Wright Kim," she corrected. "I'm keeping my name." "Of course you are." The photographer took exactly 3 photos. In all of them, neither of them smiled. That night, Liang's driver took them to a penthouse in Midtown that Sindel had never seen before. It was all floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and the kind of silence that came from owning an entire floor of a building. Liang poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one. "The staff will arrive tomorrow," he said. "A housekeeper, a chef, and a personal assistant for you. You'll also have access to my security team." "I don't need a security team." "You do now." He handed her the glass. "You're a Kim. That makes you a target for every rival syndicate, federal agent, and opportunist in the city." Sindel took a sip. The whiskey burned. And what am I to you, exactly? A shield? A statement? Your insurance, Liang said bluntly. Jian humiliated me because she thought I was weak. By marrying you, someone who doesn't fit their world, someone who doesn't care about their rules, I've shown them I don't need their approval. So I'm a middle finger. Your leverage. He sat across from her, his expression carved from stone. But if you play this right, you'll be more than that. You'll be untouchable. Sindel set down her glass. And what do you get out of this? Respect. Fear. Control. He paused. And maybe a little peace. You don't strike me as a man who wants peace. I don't strike you as a lot of things, Ms. Wright Kim. They sat in silence, two strangers bound by contract and necessity, each waiting for the other to show their hand first. Finally, Sindel stood. Which room is mine? Second door on the left. It locks from the inside. Good. She walked toward the hallway, then stopped. One more thing, Mr. Kim. I kept my end of the bargain. I showed up. I signed. I played my part. But don't mistake that for loyalty. I don't owe you anything beyond what's written in that contract. Liang met her eyes. Understood. Then we'll get along just fine. She disappeared into the bedroom, and for the first time in years, Kim Liang realized he'd met someone he couldn't predict. And that terrified him more than any rival ever had. The first rule of Kim Liang's world, Sindel learned, was that everyone had a role. The second rule was that you never, ever stepped out of it. Unfortunately for Liang, Sindel had never been good at following rules. The training began 3 days into their arrangement. A woman named Haewon arrived at the penthouse with a garment bag, a leather portfolio, and the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was Liang's cultural advisor, a polite term for the person responsible for making sure his new wife didn't embarrass him in front of Seoul's elite expat community. Mrs. Kim, Haewon said, bowing slightly. It's an honor to meet you. Sindel didn't bow back. Ms. Wright Kim. And you can skip the formalities. Haewon's smile tightened. She glanced at Liang, who was watching from the kitchen with his morning coffee, then back at Sindel. Of course. Shall we begin? What followed was 3 hours of instruction on everything from how to hold chopsticks, with grace, not efficiency, to the proper way to greet Liang's business associates, a bow, never a handshake, to the acceptable topics of conversation at formal dinners, the weather, art, philanthropy, never politics or business. Sindel listened without interrupting. She took notes. She asked clarifying questions. And when Haewon finally left, looking satisfied with her progress, Sindel burned the notes in the kitchen sink. Liang appeared in the doorway. That bad? That irrelevant, Sindel said, watching the paper curl into ash. I'm not here to play dress-up for your friends. You're here to be my wife. On paper. The contract didn't say anything about bowing. Liang crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. You're going to make this difficult, aren't you? I'm going to make this work, Sindel corrected. But not by pretending to be someone I'm not. For a moment, she thought he might argue. Instead, he just nodded. Fair enough. But when we attend the governor's gala next week, you'll need to look the part. Haewon will send over dress options. I'll choose my own dress. Sindel. I'll choose my own dress, she repeated, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Liang sighed. You're exhausting. You married me. That's on you. He left without another word, and Sindel returned to what she'd been doing before Haewon arrived, studying the penthouse. She'd started the moment Liang left for his office that first morning. The security system was top of the line but predictable, motion sensors on every window, cameras in every hallway, a panic button in every room. The guards rotated in 8-hour shifts, always in pairs, always armed. They were professionals, but they were also comfortable. Too comfortable. She'd noticed the pattern by day 2. The guard stationed outside the penthouse elevator always checked his phone at 3:47 p.m., the same time his shift ended. The camera in the hallway had a blind spot near the fire exit. And the panic button in her bedroom? It had a 3-second delay before the alarm triggered. 3 seconds was a lifetime. Sindel wasn't planning to escape. She was planning to survive. Because despite the platinum ring on her finger and the diplomatic immunity clause in her contract, she knew the truth. Kim Liang's world was built on violence. And violence always came home eventually. She spent her afternoons walking the perimeter of the building, memorizing exits and counting windows. She befriended the doorman, learned the names of the cleaning staff, and made a mental map of every camera and guard rotation in a 6-block radius. And every night, while Liang worked in his study, Sindel sat in her locked bedroom and compiled a dossier on every person in his inner circle. His head of security, former military, loyal to a fault, but with a gambling problem. His chief financial officer, brilliant with numbers, terrible with women, recently divorced. His driver, silent, observant, and carrying a 9mm under his jacket at all times. She didn't write any of it down. She didn't need to. Sindel had spent years learning to see the cracks in people, the vulnerabilities they tried to hide. It was how she'd survived before Liang, and it was how she'd survive after him, if it came to that. On the 5th night, Liang knocked on her bedroom door. "Come in." He entered, still dressed in his work clothes, looking more exhausted than she'd seen him. He sat on the edge of her bed without asking permission, running a hand through his hair. "We need to talk about the gala," he said. "I told you, I'll handle my own dress." "It's not about the dress." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something other than calculation in his eyes. "Ji-Yun will be there. Along with half the people who watched her humiliate me. They're expecting you to fail. And you're expecting me to succeed. I'm expecting you to survive." He stood, pacing the length of the room. "These people are vultures. They'll smile to your face and tear you apart the moment you turn your back. If you show weakness, any weakness, they'll use it against me." Sindel leaned back against the headboard, arms crossed. "You think I can't handle a room full of rich people? I think you're underestimating them. And I think you're underestimating me." Liang stopped pacing. He stared at her, searching for something, reassurance, maybe, or a hint of fear. He found neither. "Why did you agree to this?" he asked suddenly. "The contract, the immunity clause, all of it, you could have just taken the money and disappeared. Why stay?" Sindel considered the question. She could have lied. She could have told him what he wanted to hear. But lies required trust, and they didn't have that yet. "Because you were desperate," she said simply. "And desperate people make deals they can't take back. That contract gives me power, Mr. Kim. Real power. The kind that doesn't disappear when the money runs out. So you're using me. We're using each other." She met his gaze without flinching. "That's what a partnership is." Liang was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You're right. That's exactly what this is." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad it's you. Anyone else would have crumbled by now. Anyone else wouldn't have survived the offer." He left without replying, and Sindel listened to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a single encrypted message to a number she hadn't used in 3 years. I'm in. Stage 1 complete. Proceeding to Phase 2. The response came 30 seconds later. Be careful. Men like him don't let go easily. Sindel deleted both messages and powered off the phone. She knew exactly what kind of man Kim Liang was. That's why she'd married him. The honeymoon suite at the Bellamy Hotel was a fortress disguised as luxury. Sindel noticed it the moment they walked in: the reinforced door, the bulletproof windows, the suspiciously empty hallway. Liang had chosen this place specifically, which meant he was expecting trouble. She didn't comment. She just dropped her overnight bag by the door and scanned the room with practiced efficiency: 1 entrance, 1 exit, no balcony. The bathroom window was too small to climb through. The closet had no second access point. They were trapped by design. Relax, Liang said, loosening his tie. We're safe here. Safe is relative. My men are stationed on every floor. No one gets in without clearance. He poured himself a drink from the bar, not bothering to offer her one. This is supposed to be a honeymoon. Try to enjoy it. This is supposed to be a performance, Sindel corrected. And I'm playing my part. Liang sighed and sank into the sofa. You really don't trust anyone, do you? Not anyone who's lied to me. I haven't lied to you. You haven't told me the truth either. She sat across from him, her posture relaxed but alert. You didn't book this hotel because it's romantic. You booked it because you're expecting an attack. He didn't deny it. There are people who'd prefer I stay humiliated. A quick marriage to a nobody waitress might look like desperation to them. It is desperation. It's strategy. He swirled his drink. But yes, there's a chance someone might make a move. That's why my security team is here. That's why we're on the top floor. And that's why you're going to stay in this room while I handle any trouble. Sindel almost laughed. You think I need protecting? I think you're my wife. Even if it's just on paper, that makes you my responsibility. Your responsibility, she repeated slowly. Not your asset. Is there a difference? There's about to be. Before Liang could respond, the lights went out. The emergency lighting kicked in a heartbeat later, dim red bulbs that turned the suite into something from a nightmare. Sindel was on her feet instantly, her body moving before her mind caught up. She heard Liang swear, heard him reach for something in his jacket. Then the door exploded inward. 3 men in black tactical gear poured into the suite, weapons raised. Liang fired twice, controlled shots that dropped the first man before he could take 3 steps. But the other 2 moved like professionals, flanking left and right, using the furniture for cover. Sindel didn't think. She grabbed the bottle from the bar and hurled it at the nearest man's head. It shattered against his temple with a wet crack, and he went down hard. The third man spun toward her, his gun tracking her movement. She was already moving. She dropped low, swept his legs out from under him, and drove her elbow into his throat before he could recover. He made a choking sound and stopped moving. The whole thing took 6 seconds. Sindel straightened, breathing hard, and found Liang staring at her. What? Not now, she snapped. She moved to the door, checking the hallway. Empty. Either Liang's guards were dead or they'd been bought. We need to move. My men are compromised. She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the window. Can you rappel? Can I, what? Sindel didn't wait for an answer. She yanked the curtains down, tied them into a makeshift rope, and secured one end to the radiator. Then she opened the window, bulletproof, but it still opened, and looked down. 8 stories. Manageable. You're insane, Liang said. You're welcome. She tossed the makeshift rope out the window. Now move, or stay here and die. Your choice. For a man who'd spent his life giving orders, Liang adapted quickly. He holstered his gun, grabbed the rope, and started climbing down without another word. Sindel followed, her hands burning as she descended into the alley below. They hit the pavement together, rolled, and came up running. Liang's car was parked 2 blocks away, exactly where he'd left it. Sindel drove, weaving through traffic with the kind of precision that came from years of practice. Liang sat in the passenger seat, his gun still drawn, staring at her like she'd just sprouted wings. "Who the hell are you?" he finally asked. "Your wife," Sindel said, taking a hard left. "Remember? Waitresses don't fight like that." "I never said I was just a waitress." Liang was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Were you ever going to tell me?" "Eventually." She glanced at him. "But I figured you'd find out on your own. You're not stupid." "Clearly, I'm something close to it." He lowered his gun. "Who sent those men?" "Someone who wants you dead." "That's a long list." She pulled into an underground parking garage and killed the engine. "But whoever it was, they knew where we'd be. Which means someone in your organization is leaking information." Liang's jaw tightened. "Impossible. My people are loyal. Your people are human. And humans break." She turned to face him. "You've got a rat, Mr. Kim. And if you don't find them soon, they'll try again. Next time, they'll bring more than 3 men." "How do you know it was only 3? "Because if they'd wanted you dead, they would have sent 30. She opened the car door. "They wanted to send a message." "That was a warning." "A warning about what?" Sindel paused, 1 foot out of the car. "That you're not as untouchable as you think." She walked toward the elevator, leaving Liang sitting in the darkness, finally understanding that the woman he'd married to save his reputation might be the only thing keeping him alive. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a new thought took root. What else is she hiding? Liang hired the investigator 72 hours after the hotel attack. He didn't tell Sindel. He didn't tell anyone. He just made a single phone call to a man named Jay Park, a former intelligence operative who specialized in finding things people wanted to stay hidden. "I need a full background check," Liang said. "Birth records, employment history, criminal records, known associates. Everything." "Who's the target?" Jay asked. Liang hesitated. "My wife." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You're serious?" "Completely. This is going to cost you." "I don't care what it costs. I want to know who she is." 3 days later, Jay called back. "We need to meet in person," he said. "You're not going to like this." They met in a warehouse in Red Hook, neutral territory, far from Liang's usual offices. Jay was waiting with a tablet and an expression that Liang had learned to associate with very bad news. "Tell me," Liang said. Jay pulled up a file. Sindel Wright. Born in Detroit, 1994. Mother died when she was 6, father unknown. Spent most of her childhood in foster care. He swiped to the next screen. At 18, she joined the Army. Served 4 years, honorable discharge. After that, she drops off the grid for 2 years. No tax records, no employment history, no credit activity. Nothing. That's not unusual for someone trying to disappear. No, Jay agreed. But this is. He pulled up another file, this one with a different name. Sindel Wright died in a car accident in 2019, Jay said flatly. Single vehicle collision outside of Nashville. Body was identified through dental records. She's been legally dead for 6 years. Liang went very still. Then who the hell did I marry? Someone who's very, very good at creating false identities. Jay handed him the tablet. The woman you married is using a dead woman's social security number, birth certificate, and identity. Whoever she really is, she spent years building this cover. And based on how clean it is, she had professional help. Liang stared at the death certificate. What kind of professional help? The kind that usually comes from 3-letter agencies. CIA, NSA, DA, take your pick. Jay leaned back. Your wife is either a federal agent, a former operative, or something worse. Worse how? Worse as in she's burned. Worse as in she's running from something so dangerous that she'd rather be dead than found. Liang felt something cold settle in his chest. He thought about the way Sindel had moved in the hotel suite, precise, efficient, lethal. He thought about the way she'd taken control of the car, the escape route she'd already planned, the fact that she'd been 2 steps ahead of him from the moment the attack started. Can you find out who she really is? He asked. Jay shook his head. Not without setting off alarms. If she's connected to federal agencies, poking around will get us both killed. If she's connected to something worse. He trailed off. My advice? Cut your losses. Divorce her, pay her off, and walk away. I can't do that. Why not? Because the contract gave her diplomatic immunity. Because she'd saved his life. Because she was the only person in the world who didn't fear him. Because she's my wife, Liang said. Jay studied him for a long moment. You're in love with her. I'm curious about her. There's a difference. Not for men like you, there isn't. Jay stood, gathering his files. I'll keep digging. Quietly. But I can't promise I'll find anything. Whoever built her cover knew what they were doing. Find out anyway. Jay left, and Liang sat alone in the warehouse, staring at the death certificate of a woman named Sindel Wright. He went home and found her in the kitchen, making tea like nothing in the world was wrong. Good meeting? She asked without turning around. How did you know I was in a meeting? You've been gone for 3 hours, you're still wearing your jacket, and you smell like cigar smoke. Either you were in a meeting, or you picked up a very expensive mistress. She poured 2 cups. I'm assuming it's the meeting. Liang sat at the counter, studying her. She looked so normal, jeans, a sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Nothing about her screamed trained operative or professional liar. Who are you? He asked. She froze, just for a heartbeat. Then she set down the teapot and turned to face him. What kind of question is that? The kind that comes after I've spent the last 3 days investigating my own wife. He pulled out his phone and showed her the death certificate. Sindel Wright died 6 years ago. So either I married a ghost, or you're someone else entirely. She looked at the screen, her expression unreadable. Then she picked up her tea and took a slow sip. You hired an investigator. Can you blame me? No, she admitted. I would have done the same thing. So who are you? Sindel was quiet for a long moment. Then she set down her cup and met his eyes. My real name is classified. The life I had before Sindel Wright is classified. The reason I needed a new identity is classified. She leaned against the counter. But what I can tell you is this, I was good at what I did. Too good. And when you're too good at something dangerous, people start to notice. People start to ask questions. And eventually, people start to eliminate problems. You were an agent. I was a lot of things. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Now I'm your wife. And that contract we signed? It's the only thing keeping me alive. Liang felt the pieces clicking into place. The diplomatic immunity clause. Exactly. As long as I'm married to you, I'm untouchable by federal law. I can't be arrested, detained, or extradited. I'm safe. And what am I? Your shield? You're my partner, she said. And whether you believe it or not, I'm keeping you alive too. By lying to me? By surviving. She moved closer. You wanted a wife who wouldn't break under pressure. You got one. But that comes with complications. Liang stared at her, this woman who'd walked into his life with a fake name and a real body count. He should have been furious. He should have called his lawyers, voided the contract, and had her escorted out of the building. But he didn't. Because somewhere between the wedding and the warehouse, Kim Liang had stopped seeing Sindel as a transaction. And that terrified him more than any lie ever could. If I'm going to trust you, he said quietly, I need the truth. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough to know you're not going to put a bullet in my head the moment it's convenient. Sindel held his gaze. I won't kill you, Liang. That's not the plan. Then what is the plan? She smiled, a real one this time, sharp and dangerous. Survive long enough to make them regret letting me walk away. And for the first time since their disastrous wedding, Liang realized he might have actually found the perfect partner. Even if she was wanted by half the intelligence community. The dinner invitation came from Liang, delivered with the kind of formality that made it impossible to refuse. Private. Just us. No guards, no staff, no performance. Sindel found him in the penthouse's rarely used dining room, a space that felt more like a museum than a home. The table was set for two, candles flickering in the low light. A bottle of wine sat unopened between them. This is dramatic, she said, taking her seat. This is necessary. Liang poured the wine himself, no servants to interrupt them. We've been married for 3 weeks, and I don't know anything real about you. You know I can kill a man with a tea kettle. I'm trying to be serious. So am I. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Without the tailored suits and the armor of his public persona, he looked younger. Tired. Almost human. I want a truce, he said finally. No games, no evasions. Just one night where we're honest with each other. Sindel considered this. Honesty was dangerous. It created vulnerabilities, expectations, connections that could be exploited. But it also built trust. And trust, she was starting to realize, was the only currency that mattered in Liang's world. One night, she agreed. But if you ask a question, I get to ask one back. Fair. They ate in silence for a few minutes, perfectly prepared food that neither of them tasted. Finally, Liang set down his fork. Why did you really marry me? He asked. The real reason, not the diplomatic immunity story. Sindel took a sip of wine, gathering her thoughts. 3 years ago, I was part of a task force investigating arms trafficking in Eastern Europe. My team uncovered something we weren't supposed to find, proof that certain members of our own government were facilitating the sales. She stared at the candle flame. They erased us. 5 people on my team. 4 of them are dead. I'm the only one who made it out. And Sindel Wright was supposed to be my exit strategy. A new identity, a clean slate. But the people hunting me are thorough. They find patterns, connections, paper trails. I needed something they couldn't touch. She met his eyes. That's where you came in. I'm the complication that makes you invisible. You're the firewall that makes me impossible to prosecute. She leaned back. Your organization operates in legal gray areas. You have political connections, financial resources, and a reputation that makes people think twice before crossing you. As your wife, I inherit all of that. And with diplomatic immunity, I'm untouchable. Liang was quiet for a moment. You're using me. We covered this already. She tilted her head. My turn. Why did you really propose to me that night? And don't say it was because Ji-yun humiliated you. He laughed, a bitter sound. That's exactly why I did it. I don't believe you. Then you're smarter than I thought. He refilled his wine glass, not meeting her eyes. My father built this organization from nothing. He came to America with a suitcase and a dream, and he turned it into an empire. But empires require heirs. And heirs require legitimacy. You're not legitimate? I'm the oldest son, but I'm also the least traditional. My father wanted me to marry someone from a respected Korean family, someone who understood our culture, our values, our history. Instead, I spent years working my way through American business schools and boardrooms, trying to make us legitimate in ways my father never understood. And Ji-yun was supposed to be the bridge between my world and his. The perfect political marriage that would satisfy everyone. He smiled without humor. But she rejected me because she knew the truth. I'm not my father. I never will be. And the harder I try to prove I'm worthy of his empire, the more I look like a pretender. Sindel studied him in the candlelight. So marrying me was a rebellion. Marrying you was an admission. He finally looked at her. An admission that I'll never be the son my father wanted. So I might as well be the man I actually am. And who is that? I don't know yet. The honesty in his voice surprised her. She'd expected walls, deflection, the careful manipulation she'd seen him use on everyone else. But this was different. This was real. My turn again, Liang said. The scars on your hands. How did you get them? Sindel looked down at her knuckles, white lines against dark skin, barely visible in the low light. Afghanistan. I was attached to a forward operating base as a translator. We got ambushed during a supply run. I spent 6 hours pulling survivors out of a burning vehicle. She flexed her fingers. 3rd-degree burns. They told me I'd never regain full mobility. But you did. I did. She smiled slightly. Turns out spite is a hell of a motivator. That's not spite. That's survival. What's the difference? Survival is instinct, Liang said. Spite is personal. They fell into silence again, but it felt different now. Less like 2 strangers performing a role and more like 2 people who'd accidentally found themselves in the same lifeboat. One more question, Sindel said. Why are you so afraid of being seen as weak? Liang's expression darkened. Because in my world, weakness gets you killed. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. It's a deflection. She leaned forward. What happened to make you believe that? For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he stood and crossed to the window, looking out over the city. When I was 12, my father brought me to a meeting with one of his business partners. A man named Cho. He was old school, traditional, the kind of man who believed respect was earned through fear. Liang's voice was flat, detached. During the meeting, I spilled tea on the table. It was an accident. But Cho said it showed weakness. Disrespect. He took out a knife and told my father that if I couldn't be trusted with tea, I couldn't be trusted with anything. Sindel felt her chest tighten. What did your father do? He gave Cho the knife and told him to teach me a lesson. Liang touched his left shoulder unconsciously. The scar is still there. Cho said it would remind me that weakness was unacceptable. Your father let someone cut you. My father taught me how to survive. He turned back to face her. He was right. I've never shown weakness since. Sindel stood and crossed the room. She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the old pain in his eyes. That's not survival, she said quietly. That's trauma. Is there a difference? There's about to be. She reached up and touched his shoulder, the place where the scar was hidden beneath expensive fabric. Liang flinched but didn't pull away. You don't have to be your father, she said. And you don't have to be alone. I've been alone my entire life. Not anymore. She dropped her hand. You married me, remember? For better or worse. And I don't abandon my partners. Liang stared at her, something shifting in his expression. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. He reached out and took her hand, the one with the scars, and held it gently. We're a mess, aren't we? We're survivors, Sindel corrected. There's a difference. They stood there in the candlelight, two broken people who'd accidentally formed something that looked almost like trust. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was real. And in Liang's world, real was the rarest commodity of all. Later that night, as Sindel lay in her locked bedroom, she thought about the man on the other side of the wall. The man who'd been taught that weakness meant death. The man who'd married a stranger to prove he didn't need anyone's approval. The man who was starting to feel less like a transaction and more like a partner. She picked up her phone and typed out a message to the encrypted number she'd used weeks ago. Change of plans. I'm staying. The response came immediately. That's a mistake. The intelligence network was a mess. Sindel discovered this on her third week of living in the penthouse, when she accidentally stumbled onto Liang's operation files while looking for a phone charger. What she found was a catastrophe of inefficiency, outdated contacts, redundant surveillance, and enough security holes to drive a truck through. She didn't mention it. Not immediately. Instead, she spent the next 72 hours doing what she did best, observing, analyzing, and reconstructing the entire operation in her head. By the time she was done, she had a plan. I need access to your network, she told Liang over breakfast. He looked up from his tablet. Excuse me? Your intelligence operation. It's hemorrhaging money and producing minimal results. I can fix it. You've been looking at my files. I've been surviving in your home. Your files were just there. She poured herself coffee. And before you get defensive, I'm not criticizing. I'm offering a solution. Liang set down his tablet slowly. What kind of solution? The kind that turns your operation from a liability into an asset. She pulled out her phone and showed him a spreadsheet she built. You're paying 17 different informants for overlapping information. You have surveillance on targets who haven't been active in 2 years. And your encryption is so outdated that a high school hacker could break it. And you can do better? I already have. She swiped to another screen. I've identified the 6 informants worth keeping, the 3 targets that actually matter, and a new encryption protocol that's currently being used by NATO. I can implement all of it in 48 hours. Liang stared at the spreadsheet. You built this in 3 days? I had free time. He was quiet for a long moment, studying the data with the intensity of a man who'd spent his life building something fragile and was only now realizing how fragile it truly was. If I give you access, he said slowly, you'll have complete visibility into my operation. My contacts, my revenue streams, my vulnerabilities. I already have visibility. I just need authorization. Why should I trust you with this? Sindel met his eyes. Because I'm the only person in your organization who doesn't have a reason to betray you. Everyone else is here for money, power, or fear. I'm here because our interests align. And when they stop aligning, then I'll tell you to your face and walk away. She leaned forward. But until then, you've got the best intelligence analyst in the country sitting in your kitchen. You can either use me, or you can keep wasting money on a system that's already failing. Liang studied her for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and made a single call. Grant her level 1 access, he said. Everything except financial records. Level 1 won't be enough, Sindel said. It's a start. He ended the call. Prove you can handle that, and we'll talk about level 2. Fair enough. Within 48 hours, Sindel had dismantled and rebuilt Liang's entire intelligence operation. She fired 9 informants, recruited 3 new ones with better access, and implemented an encryption system that would take a government supercomputer months to crack. She also discovered something troubling. You have a leak, she told Liang on the 3rd day. Someone in your inner circle is feeding information to an outside party. Liang's jaw tightened. Are you certain? Completely. Look at this. She pulled up a series of data points. Someone accessed your secure server 47 times in the last month. Always late at night, always from an internal terminal, always covering their tracks. Who? I don't know yet. But they're good. Professional level good. She highlighted a pattern. They're only accessing files related to your personal security and financial transactions. They're not stealing business intelligence, they're building a profile. For what purpose? To find your vulnerabilities. To know when you're alone, where you're going, who you trust. She looked at him. This isn't corporate espionage. This is an assassination prep. The color drained from Liang's face. How long do we have? Depends on who hired them. But if I were planning something, I'd make my move within the next 2 weeks. Before you realize what's happening. Liang stood and paced the length of the room. I need a list of everyone with server access. I already have it. 23 people, including your head of security, your CFO, and your personal driver. All of them are loyal. One of them isn't. Sindel pulled up another screen. But I can find them. I just need time. How much time? Give me a week. I'll flush them out. Liang turned to face her. You realize what you're offering to do? If you're wrong. I'm not wrong. If you're wrong, he continued, "You'll destroy relationships I've spent years building. You'll make me look paranoid and weak. And if I'm right, you'll be alive to thank me." He studied her face, searching for doubt or hesitation. He found neither. "1 week," he said finally. "But you operate through me. No confrontations, no accusations. You find the leak, you bring me proof, and I handle it." Agreed. Sindel worked 18-hour days for the next 6 days. She monitored every keystroke, tracked every login, and cross-referenced every access point with external communications. She ate at her desk, slept in 4-hour intervals, and spoke to exactly 3 people: Liang, the housekeeper, and the pizza delivery guy. On the 7th day, she found him. "It's Jay Park," she said, dropping a folder on Liang's desk. Liang looked up, his face hardening. "My investigator? Your investigator, your informant, and your leak." She opened the folder. "He's been selling your information to a private military contractor called Obsidian Solutions. They specialize in corporate espionage and executive removal. Assassination." She pointed to a series of bank transfers. "He's been paid $200,000 over the last 3 months. The final payment is scheduled for next week, contingent on delivery of your updated security protocols." Liang's hands clenched into fists. "Jay has worked for me for 5 years. Which makes him the perfect asset. He knows your routines, your vulnerabilities, your blind spots." She pulled up a final document. "This is an encrypted message he sent yesterday. I decoded it this morning. It's your schedule for the shipyard meeting next Tuesday. That meeting is confidential. Only 4 people know about it. Now 5. She closed the folder. "Obsidian Solutions is planning to hit you there. Multiple shooters, no witnesses, and a narrative that makes it look like a gang dispute." Liang stood and walked to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "Do you know who hired Obsidian?" "Not yet. But I have a theory." She pulled up a photo. Ji-Yun Park. Jay's cousin. The silence that followed was absolute. "She's family," Liang said quietly. "Family doesn't mean loyalty. Not in this world." Sindel stood beside him. "She rejected you publicly, tried to come back when that failed, and when you refused her, she decided you were a liability. The kind that needed to be eliminated. Can you prove it?" "Not yet. But I will." She turned to face him. "The question is, what do you want to do about Jay?" Liang was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold as winter steel. "Nothing. Yet." He turned to her. "We're going to that meeting. We're going to let Obsidian make their move. And we're going to make sure they fail. You're using yourself as bait. I'm using us as bait." He met her eyes. "You said you'd handle this. Can you?" Sindel smiled, sharp, dangerous, and completely confident. "Mr. Kim, I was born for this." Liang's father arrived unannounced on a Thursday morning. Sindel was in the study, finalizing the security protocols for the shipyard operation, when she heard the commotion in the foyer. Raised voices. Rapid Korean. And then Liang's voice, low and controlled, saying something that made the air feel 10 degrees colder. She found them in the living room, Liang standing near the window, his father seated on the sofa like a king surveying a disappointing kingdom. 2 bodyguards flanked the door. Liang's father was exactly what she'd expected, immaculately dressed, silver-haired, and radiating the kind of authority that came from decades of building an empire on blood and calculation. You must be the wife, he said in perfect English, not bothering to stand. Sindel. She didn't bow. And you must be the father. His eyes narrowed. I am Kim Tae-won. And you are a problem. Father, Liang began. No. Tae-won raised a hand. I came here to resolve this situation quietly. I will speak. Sindel crossed her arms. I'm listening. My son made a mistake, Tae-won said, his tone flat and businesslike. A mistake born from humiliation and poor judgment. He married you to make a statement. The statement has been made. Now it is time to dissolve this arrangement. And if I don't want it dissolved? Then you will accept a financial settlement of $5 million and sign documentation agreeing to never contact my son or his associates again. Sindel glanced at Liang, who was staring at his father with barely controlled fury. Did you know he was coming? She asked. No. She turned back to Tae-won. That's a generous offer. It is the only offer. Then I decline. Tae-won's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. You're right. It's not. Sindel moved closer. Because I have diplomatic immunity, a legally binding marriage contract, and zero interest in your money. So unless you plan to kidnap me, which would trigger an international incident, you have no leverage. I have more leverage than you can imagine. Then use it. She smiled. But do it quickly, because in 72 hours, your son and I are taking over his entire operation. And you'll be retired. The room went absolutely silent. Tae-won stood slowly, his face a mask of controlled rage. You dare. I dare, Sindel interrupted. Because unlike everyone else in your world, I don't need your approval. I don't need your respect. And I sure as hell don't need your permission. Tae-won looked at his son. Control your wife. She doesn't need controlling, Liang said quietly. She needs supporting. And that's what I'm going to do. Then you are choosing her over your family. Over your legacy. I'm choosing survival over tradition. Liang moved to stand beside Sindel. Father, I love you. I respect everything you've built. But the world has changed. Your methods don't work anymore. And if I keep following your path, I'll end up dead within a year. So you replace me with her? I partner with her, Liang corrected. There's a difference. Tae-won stared at his son for a long moment. Then he turned to his bodyguards and spoke in Korean. Whatever he said made them tense. Sindel's hand moved to her waistband, where she'd started carrying a weapon after the hotel attack. Liang noticed and shook his head slightly. Father, he said, his voice harder now. If you do this, there's no going back. There is already no going back. Tae-won buttoned his jacket. You have made your choice. Now you will live with the consequences. He walked out, his bodyguards following. The door closed with a sound like a coffin lid. Liang exhaled slowly, his hands shaking. He's going to kill you. He's going to try. Sindel moved to the window, watching Tae-won's car disappear into traffic. But he'll have to get in line. This isn't a joke. I'm not joking. She turned to face him. Your father just declared war. Which means we need to win the shipyard operation and consolidate power before he makes his move. And if we can't, then we both die, and your father rebuilds his empire over our graves. She walked toward the study. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. Liang followed her, stopping in the doorway. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Fighting for me. For us. You could have taken the 5 million and disappeared. Sindel looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd been raised to believe weakness was death. The man who'd married a stranger to prove he didn't need anyone. The man who was finally learning that strength came from partnership, not isolation. Because I'm tired of running, she said simply. And because you're the first person in 3 years who's treated me like a partner instead of a problem. You are a problem. I'm your problem. She smiled. There's a difference. Liang crossed the room and did something he'd never done before. He pulled her into an embrace. Not romantic, not calculated, just human. We're going to survive this, he said quietly. I know. How can you be so sure? Sindel pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Because I've been surviving impossible things my entire life. And now I've got backup. Is that what I am? Backup? No, she said. You're the reason I stopped running. And for the first time since his father had walked out, Liang believed they might actually win. The shipyard smelled like rust and salt water. Sindel arrived 2 hours before the meeting, dressed in black tactical gear that Liang's security team pretended not to notice. She'd spent the previous 48 hours memorizing every inch of the location, the warehouse entrances, the container positions, the sniper vantage points, the escape routes. She knew exactly where Obsidian Solutions would position their shooters. She also knew exactly how to kill them first. You don't have to do this, Liang said, checking his weapon for the 3rd time. My team can handle it. Your team is good, Sindel replied, adjusting her earpiece. But they're not good enough. Obsidian doesn't send amateurs. Neither do I. She looked at him, really looked at him. He was wearing a bulletproof vest under his suit, his jaw set with the kind of determination that came from knowing you might die but refusing to run. He'd become someone different over the past weeks. Stronger. More certain. When this is over, she said quietly, we're going to have a very long conversation about your risk tolerance. When this is over, we're going to have a very long vacation. Deal. The meeting was scheduled for midnight, neutral ground, minimal witnesses, maximum deniability. Liang's contact was a weapons dealer named Han who'd been playing both sides for years. He was the perfect target for an ambush. Isolated, predictable, and valuable enough that his death would look like business as usual. Sindel positioned herself on a catwalk above the main warehouse floor, her rifle equipped with thermal imaging. From this vantage point, she could see everything, the meeting table, the container rows, and the 3 heat signatures positioned exactly where she'd predicted. 3 shooters, she said into her comms. 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 11 o'clock. Elevated positions, long-range rifles. Confirmed, Liang replied. He was on the ground floor with 2 bodyguards, playing his part perfectly. When do we move? Not yet. Let them commit. Han arrived at 11:58 p.m., flanked by his own security. He looked nervous, which meant Jay had probably tipped him off that something was wrong but hadn't told him what. Smart. It made him vulnerable without making him useless. Liang greeted him with a handshake and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. They made small talk while Sindel tracked the shooters through her scope. They were professionals, calm, patient, waiting for the perfect moment. She didn't give them one. At exactly midnight, when the shooters adjusted their positions for a synchronized kill shot, Sindel fired 3 times in rapid succession. 3 suppressed cracks. 3 bodies dropping from their perches before they could pull their triggers. Clear, she said calmly. Chaos erupted on the warehouse floor. Han's security drew weapons. Liang's team responded in kind. But Liang himself didn't move, he just raised one hand, his voice cutting through the panic. Stand down. All of you. Slowly, reluctantly, the guns lowered. Liang looked up at the catwalk. How many more? Ground team, 6 operators moving in from the east entrance, Sindel reported, tracking new heat signatures. ETA 30 seconds. Can you handle them? Can you handle Han? Yes. Then we're good. Sindel descended from the catwalk like a shadow, moving through the container rows with the precision of someone who'd spent years operating in hostile territory. The Obsidian team was good, military-trained, well-coordinated, and equipped with enough firepower to level a small building. But they weren't expecting her. She took the first operator with a knife to the throat, silent, efficient, invisible. The second died before he realized his partner was gone. The third managed to get his weapon up, but Sindel swept his legs, disarmed him, and put 2 rounds in his chest before he hit the ground. The remaining 3 realized they were being hunted. They split up, using the containers for cover, trying to flank her position. It was a good strategy. Against a normal opponent, it might have worked. Sindel wasn't normal. She led them into a kill box, a narrow corridor between 2 container stacks where only one person could advance at a time. When they followed, she dropped a flashbang, vaulted onto a container roof, and picked them off one by one as they stumbled through the smoke. The entire engagement lasted 90 seconds. Ground team neutralized, she said into her comms, breathing hard but controlled. Confirmed, Liang replied. We're secure here. Sindel made her way back to the main floor, where Liang had Han zip-tied to a chair and Jay Park kneeling beside him. Jay looked terrified, which meant Liang's security team had picked him up exactly when she told them to. You knew, Jay said, staring at Sindel. You knew the whole time. I knew from day one. She pulled off her tactical gloves. You got sloppy. Started accessing files you didn't need. Left digital fingerprints everywhere. I covered my tracks. You covered amateur tracks. I'm not an amateur. She looked at Liang. What do you want to do with them? Liang crouched in front of Jay, his expression unreadable. You've worked for me for 5 years. I trusted you. I paid you well. I treated you like family. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Why? Money, Jay said simply. And because Ji-yun asked me to. So family loyalty beats professional loyalty. Family is all that matters. You're right, Liang said. It is. He stood and pulled out his phone, making a single call. Send them in. 2 minutes later, Taewon's bodyguards entered the warehouse, flanking an older woman Sindel didn't recognize. She was crying, her hands bound, her face bruised. That's Jay's mother, Liang said quietly. My father took her 4 hours ago. Insurance, he called it. Jay's face went white. You bastard. I didn't take her. My father did. Liang looked at Sindel. But I'm going to give her back. Because unlike my father, I don't punish families for individual betrayal. He gestured to the bodyguards, who cut the woman's bonds and helped her toward Jay. She collapsed against her son, sobbing. You're free to go, Liang said. Both of you. But if I ever see you again, if you ever work against me again, I won't be this generous. Jay stared at him, disbelief and shame warring across his face. Then he helped his mother to her feet and walked out without another word. Han watched them go, then looked at Liang. You just let them walk. I let them live, Liang corrected. There's a difference. Your father wouldn't have. I'm not my father. He turned to Sindel. Are we done here? One more thing. She pulled out her phone and played a recording, Jian's voice, clear and unmistakable, giving Jay instructions to deliver Liang's security protocols to Obsidian Solutions. Han listened, his expression darkening. You have proof. I have everything. Sindel pocketed the phone. And tomorrow morning, this recording goes to every major player in the organization. Jian Park will be blacklisted, bankrupt, and very alone. That's a death sentence. That's justice. She looked at Liang. Unless you want to handle it differently? Liang was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No. Release it. Let everyone know what happens when you betray me. They left the shipyard as dawn broke over the water, tired, bloody, but alive. The drive back to the penthouse was silent, both of them too exhausted to speak. But when they reached home, Liang caught her hand before she could walk away. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For being better at this than I am. For saving my life. For. He trailed off, searching for words. For staying. Sindel squeezed his hand. We're partners, remember? Partners don't abandon each other. Even when it's dangerous? Especially when it's dangerous. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Not romantic, not yet. But intimate in a way that mattered more. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. Neither do I, she said. But we'll figure it out together. And for the first time in his life, Kim Liang believed that might actually be enough. The consolidation of power took 3 weeks. Sindel worked 16-hour days, systematically dismantling the old guard and rebuilding Liang's organization from the ground up. She fired everyone who'd shown even a hint of disloyalty. She recruited new intelligence assets from her old networks, people who owed her favors, people who knew how to keep secrets. She implemented security protocols so tight that even federal agencies would have trouble penetrating them. And she did it all with Liang at her side, learning, adapting, transforming from his father's shadow into something entirely new. Tae-won didn't go quietly. He tried economic pressure first, calling in debts, freezing accounts, turning business partners against his son. It failed. Sindel had already moved their critical assets into offshore accounts he couldn't touch. Then he tried political pressure, leveraging his connections in the Korean business community, threatening to expose Liang's operations to federal investigators. That failed too. Sindel's diplomatic immunity extended to her husband in ways that made prosecution nearly impossible. Finally, desperately, he tried one last play, a public denouncement. He called a press conference, stood before cameras, and declared that his son was no longer part of the Kim family. That he was disowned, disinherited, and dead to him. Liang watched the broadcast from his office, Sindel standing beside him. How do you feel? She asked. Free, he said simply. For the first time in my life, I'm free. Free is dangerous. Free means you're on your own. I'm not on my own. He looked at her. I have you. You do. She smiled. For better or worse. I think we passed worse somewhere around the shipyard. Then it's all uphill from here. The reorganization was complete by the end of the month. Liang's operation was leaner, smarter, and more dangerous than it had ever been. His father's old guard had been replaced by Sindel's carefully vetted recruits. His business model had shifted from brute force to strategic intelligence. His reputation had transformed from the son who needed proving to the man who survived the impossible. And at the center of it all was Sindel Wright, the black waitress who'd become the most feared intelligence operative in the criminal underworld. They were in the penthouse office when the final piece fell into place. A courier delivered a sealed envelope marked with Taewon's personal seal. Liang opened it carefully. Inside was a single document, a formal transfer of all remaining Kim family assets to his son, signed and notarized. "He's giving up," Sindel said, reading over his shoulder. "He's accepting reality." Liang set down the document. "He knows he can't win. So he's choosing to step aside before I force him out." That's unusually pragmatic for a man who values tradition over everything. He values survival more. Liang pulled out his phone and made a call. "Father, I received your document." Whatever Taewon said on the other end made Liang's expression soften slightly. "I understand," he said quietly. "And I hope, someday, you'll understand why I did this." A pause. "I love you too." He ended the call and sat down heavily. "He's retiring," Liang said. "Moving back to Seoul. He said he's proud of me for being strong enough to choose my own path." That's progress. That's as close to an apology as he'll ever come. He looked at Sindel. "We won." "We survived," she corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Winning is temporary. Survival is permanent." She moved to stand beside him. "And we're very, very good at surviving." Liang stood and pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. This time, it was different. This time, it wasn't just comfort or partnership. It was something more. "I love you," he said quietly. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was the hotel. Maybe it was the dinner. Maybe it was watching you take down 6 armed operators like it was nothing. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a transaction and started being everything." Sindel looked up at him, her dark eyes searching his face. "You know I'm still wanted by federal agencies. You know I have enemies who'll never stop hunting me. You know being with me makes you a target." "I know." "And you're still saying this?" "I'm still saying this." She smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Then I guess it's a good thing I love you too." They kissed, and it felt like coming home after years of running. Like finding safety in the last place you expected it. Like building something real from the ashes of 2 broken lives. When they finally pulled apart, Sindel rested her head against his chest. "What now?" she asked. "Now we build something that lasts." He kissed the top of her head. "A dynasty. Our dynasty. That's ambitious. You married me. Ambitious is mandatory." She laughed, a sound he was learning to love more than anything. 6 months later, they stood together on the rooftop of their building, watching the sun set over the city they conquered. Liang's organization was thriving. Sindel's intelligence network was unmatched. And their partnership had evolved into something neither of them had expected, a marriage that was real. "Do you ever miss it?" Liang asked. "Your old life?" "Sometimes," Sindel admitted. "But not enough to go back." "What changed?" "You did." She leaned against the railing. "You gave me something I haven't had in years, a reason to stop running." "And what's that?" "A home. A partner. A purpose." She turned to face him. "You gave me a future." Liang pulled her close, and they stood there in the fading light, 2 people who'd been brought to their knees by rejection, humiliation, and betrayal. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something stronger than either of them could have managed alone. Kim Liang was no longer on his knees to the world. Only to the woman who'd saved him. And Sindel Wright, or whoever she really was, had finally stopped running. She'd found something worth fighting for. She'd found home. And that's how a broken mafia boss and a black waitress with a deadly secret built an empire together. From a humiliating rejection at a gala to becoming the most feared power couple in the underworld, Kim Liang and Sindel Wright proved that sometimes the best partnerships are born from desperation, forged in fire, and sealed with trust. If you love this story of revenge, redemption, and unexpected love, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss another epic tale. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you and know how far our stories are reaching across the world. Want more stories of powerful women, dangerous men, and love that defies the odds? Check out the playlist in the description. Until next time, remember, never underestimate the person serving your drinks. They might just be the one who saves your life. Stay dangerous. Stay curious. And I'll see you in the next story.